Okay, let's do a little walk through Berkeley with the actual inceptive look at the problem of Wittgenstein and Heidegger. So I say the problem of Wittgenstein and Heidegger um, in order to say this is both of them have the same problem. And then I want to show, and so I think this view of Wittgenstein and Heidegger isn't generally widely promulgated, but I think it's clear and cogent. So I want to try to state it as directly as possible. So we have this statement, one from Wittgenstein himself, where he says that he can understand Heidegger's impulse of wanting to go beyond language. And so let's try to stake out a ground on what the analytic people call the assertoric, and what for Heidegger is the problem of predication, or that something is always being presented as something. Assertoric means an assertion is made with the assumption that the assertion is about reality, and then with this further background assumption that somehow an assertion about reality is something neutral, and that it can be, and that the assertoric or the assertion can be said as against something like a hypothetical, or against a exclamation, or against an order, or against some other kind of way of using language that wouldn't be merely to say, there's a gas station, there's a car. It's supposed to be a mere assertion about reality. And then since it's discovered that there's all these other ways of using language, so for instance, if I were to say help or fire, would this be in the same way a simple assertion, or is it somehow doesn't it somehow involve the whole environment? So both in Heidegger and Wittgenstein, we have this issue that one, there's a question, is there something that language doesn't cover? So it's as though to say, before one learns one's first language, when one's a child, does one already have, is there already something there? We have certain cases like Helen Keller and others who've learned language at a late date, and then have the experience consciously of realize, oh, this thing has a name. These things have names. But in both cases, a leading point is the mere, in Heidegger's case, the predicated thing. So there's a ding, das ding, there's a ding, the thing ding book, or the thing book, which you could go into to see the criticism of the medieval treatment of the thing, out of which one always says, this thing is the world, or this thing is the cloudy sky, or this thing is the telephone pole. So that, and Wittgenstein makes remarks like, what does this refer to? So this generic space of the thing or the this seems to present, from the point of view of the tradition, this place where, from Heidegger's perspective, he has to think through the problem of validity, which haunts his teacher Husserl, because Husserl inherited it from Lotze, and it was a big problem to try to work out in the theory of how logic could distance itself from something that the people that don't like it call psychologism, just as people talk about scientism, in the sense that psychologism is a claim that psychology would take priority over logic. But in the course of, in Heidegger's book on the, I forget how it's called, Logic and Truth, the book right before Being in Time, or the seminar course right before Being in Time, he's trying to work out this psychologism problem, which comes all the way down to, as I said, his teacher Husserl. And the way to work it out is it eventually, probing around, Heidegger discovers that you have to say that the language always happens in a situation where there's some kind of practices going on, where the thing named is like, it's something we're using in practical daily life, where there's a distinction between things that are just obstacles. Like if I wanted to go across the street right here, I can't because there's an obstacle in my way. That's my purpose. But on another occasion, a car isn't just an obstacle because I'm doing something else. Language never just has this bare sort of putting a sticker with a name on it thing, so that the zoo handing comes in, and then in both Heidegger and Wittgenstein, there's a different kind of recognition of, as it were, the higher and lower than the mere predicated present available statements about a frozen world, like as if one weren't actually participating in some project, but just treating things not as obstacles and not as things that furthered aims, but as some neutral mathematical type of non-rhetorical, non-passionate category. In Wittgenstein, so you could look at it this way: there's primary, secondary, and tertiary qualities in Heidegger, where the tertiary qualities refers to something like both the religiosity, but also it's what he wants to bring out in the, Van Gogh sees something with his own eyes, a strange sun, and then he puts that down in the painting. And this has also the character of a tertiary quality, which is not either something like color, which is secondary quality that could be different depending on what kind of eyes you have, nor the supposed neutral state of something always empirical, as it were. That's something always, like, they tried to use solidity as this. In Wittgenstein, you get a version out of the analytic tradition where he wants to say, instead of the tertiary qualities, he talks about sort of the glorious. So he's saying somebody who, this is the example given by his friend Norman Malcolm in order to explain what Wittgenstein's doing, saying somebody listening to Bach says that was delightful, as though they had just been entertained by light entertainment rather than by something meant to be a vehicle to the transcendent. And then somebody says, no, you should have said that you should have used the word glorious there. Bach is glorious, meaning he vehiculates us to the transcendent, and that, so this is kind of like a tertiary quality, something that it would be right there, language names it, but with the word glorious, but um, how would one express that in terms of the sensorium? Um, so this set of problems, we could say, both in Heidegger and Wittgenstein, to reiterate, sort of stem around the fact that there's no neutral way to say what language is or what language is doing. And then Wittgenstein uses the word grammar, but what he means is the same thing I mean by usage. By usage, I mean, like the guy Cecil Brown asked me, what does blunderbuss mean, after I'd said Howard is a blunderbuss. And my answer was, because I could sense that he was receptive to language and he would understand me, he was open to it. So I immediately said, without thinking, I immediately said, I'm just using it to mean something large and unwieldy, which he understood, because he understands what usage is. Not everybody, in fact, I noticed quite a large proportion of the society is unable to immediately and naturally grasp the sense of usage. But Wittgenstein basically calls that grammar. It's how we're using the word. But often this goes unnoticed because a whole society has the same usage, because they're about the same stuff. They're doing the same stuff. And yeah, these problems seem to be different in Heidegger and Wittgenstein to the extent that their usage is different. And we could say the locus classicus, I mean, both because they use different technical vocabulary and they talk in a different way, but also because what they're trying to do is somewhat different. But as though it were with the same basic issue of that there's no neutral point at which I say this is merely an assertion of reality. So yeah, much more could be said on this subject, and it's open investigation, but I just wanted to sort of put down the basic avenue into the situation where they're both have the same problem.